You know what they say about humans? They are like cockroaches. Resilient, annoying, and impossible to get rid of once they show up somewhere they are not supposed to be. Trust me, I should know. My name is Vex-Prime, and I have been watching these bipedal disasters for the past 50 rotations as the Galactic Council's primary intelligence officer. The day we kicked Earth out of the Council was supposed to be the end of their story. Hey, what a cosmic joke that turned out to be. Let me paint you the scene. Picture the Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Station, where representatives from 300 civilized worlds gather to make decisions that shape the galaxy. The air recyclers hummed with tension that day, and every delegate's breathing apparatus clicked nervously as Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the defendant's podium. "You stand accused," announced High Magistrate Korth, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence like some kind of biological light show, of 17 violations of the Galactic Peace Accords, 43 breaches of the Non-Interference Protocol, and, oh yes, the complete annihilation of a Zephyrian trade convoy. Elena, bless her stubborn human heart, did not even flinch. She just crossed her arms and raised one eyebrow in that infuriatingly human way. "The Zephyrians were running a slave operation, Your Honor. We simply freed the cargo by blowing up their ships," shrieked the Zephyrian delegate, his tentacles writhing in what I assumed was outrage. Hard to tell with those slimy creatures. "Well," Elena shrugged, "we asked nicely first. They said no. So we asked less nicely, with explosives." Bad, the audacity. Even I had to admire her nerve, though I would never admit it publicly. Korth's scales rippled with annoyance as he consulted his datapad. "Furthermore, your species has been caught interfering in 17 planetary conflicts, establishing unauthorized colonies in restricted sectors, and, what is this? Selling something called coffee as a controlled substance?" "Hey now," Elena protested. "That coffee thing was a misunderstanding. How were we supposed to know it was basically liquid crack to the Bendari?" "Oster." They kept asking for more. The Bendari representative, currently twitching from caffeine withdrawal, glared at her with his compound eyes. "You turned half our population into addicts, Arcad, and your productivity went up 40%. Elena shot back. "You are welcome." I watched from the intelligence booth as the proceedings devolved into exactly the kind of chaos humans seemed to attract wherever they went. The Altarian delegate was arguing with the Proximate ambassador about trade routes, as the cetacean representative was making those awful clicking sounds that passed for their language, and somewhere in the back, a small fight had broken out between the Rigel Confederacy and the Outer Rim Alliance. "Just another day at the Galactic Council, really." Korth's voice boomed through the translation matrices. "Order. We are here to address the human problem, not relitigate every trade dispute in the outer spiral. The human problem. That is what they called it. As if an entire species could be reduced to a simple equation with a neat solution." Elena stood there, looking utterly unbothered by the fact that 300 alien civilizations were basically putting her entire species on trial. "So, what is it going to be, Your Honor? Are you going to give us a strongly worded letter? Or are we finally getting to the good part?" Korth's scales turned a deeper shade of purple, which in his species indicated either deep thought or severe indigestion. "The Council has deliberated. Earth and all human colonies are hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. Your species is banned from entering core space, prohibited from using Council trade routes, and barred from all diplomatic relations with member worlds." The hall fell silent. Even the arguing delegate stopped mid-insult to stare at Elena, waiting for her reaction. She nodded slowly, as if she had expected this outcome all along. "Well then," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I guess we will just have to make our own way in the galaxy, one not we." "You will find it quite difficult," sneered the Zephyrian delegate, "to survive without Council support. Your primitive technology, your violent tendencies, your complete lack of diplomatic finesse. You will be lucky to last a decade without us." Elena smiled then, and even from my position high above the assembly floor, I could see that it was not a pleasant smile. It was the kind of smile a predator gives right before it strikes. "You know what?" she said, stepping closer to the delegate podium. "You might be right. We might not last a decade playing by your rules." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow every delegate in the hall heard her clearly. Good thing we never were much for following rules in the first place. And with that, she turned and walked out of the assembly hall, her boots clicking against the polished floor with military precision. The massive doors sealed behind her with a pneumatic hiss that sounded oddly final. The silence that followed was, well, let us just say it was the kind of silence that makes even career diplomats uncomfortable. "Well," Korth finally said, his voice carefully neutral, "that concludes the matter. Earth is officially expelled from the Council. Meeting adjourned." I should have known right then that we had made a terrible mistake. The humans had this saying about sleeping giants, but none of us were paying attention to old Earth proverbs at the time. 3 months later, my intelligence network started picking up disturbing reports from the Outer Rim. Human ships, moving in coordinated fleets, new colonies appearing seemingly overnight on worlds that had been considered uninhabitable, trade agreements with independent systems that had never shown interest in council politics. It is probably nothing, I told myself, filing the reports in the low-priority folder, humans being humans. They will burn out soon enough. 6 months later, the reports were getting harder to ignore. An entire pirate confederation had surrendered to human forces after what they described as the most one-sided slaughter in galactic history. Apparently, the humans had tracked down their main base, surrounded it with a fleet of ships that looked like they had been cobbled together from scrap metal and pure spite, and then proceeded to demonstrate why nobody in their right mind should pick a fight with a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. Still nothing to worry about, the Council assured itself. Pirates are hardly a threat to civilized space. 1 year later, Marcus Reid arrived at Nexus Station. I remember that day clearly because it was the first time in my career that I had seen the Council's collective composure crack. Reid was not what any of us expected from a human diplomat, where Elena had been confrontational and direct. Reid was, well, he was smooth, polished. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than most delegates made in a year, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a negotiation in his life. "Gentlemen, ladies, and various other beings," he said, his voice carrying that slight accent that marked him as one of the old Earth families. "I bring greetings from the Independent Human Alliance." "The what now?" Korth sputtered, his scales shifting through several colors in rapid succession. Reid smiled, and unlike Elena's predatory grin, his was warm and friendly and somehow far more terrifying. "Oh, did we not mention? Yes, we have been rather busy since our departure from the Council. 37 worlds now fly under human protection, with more joining every week. We have established trade partnerships with over 200 independent systems, and our fleet currently numbers." He paused to consult a datapad. "Well, let us just say it is considerably larger than when we left." The Zephyrian delegate, apparently still bitter about the whole slave ship incident, leaned forward aggressively. "Impossible. Your species lacks the resources, the technology, the organizational capacity to..." "To what?" Reid interrupted, his smile never wavering. "He'd build an empire from scratch in less than a standard year." "You are absolutely right. It should have been impossible." He activated a holoprojector, and suddenly the center of the assembly hall was filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The human territories were marked in blue, spreading across the outer rim like some kind of infection. But that was not what made the delegates gasp, it was the sheer scope of it. Human influence now extended across nearly a quarter of the galaxy, encompassing systems that had been independent for millennia. "How?" whispered the Altarian delegate, her crystalline voice barely audible through her species translator. Reid's smile widened. "Simple. We offered them something the Council never could." "Which was?" Korth demanded. "Choice." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Reid continued, his voice taking on the cadence of a teacher explaining a simple concept to slow students. You see, the Council has always operated on the principle of control. Join us. Follow our rules, accept our protection, and in return, we will graciously allow you to exist in our galaxy. But humans, well, we have always believed that beings should be free to choose their own path. Anarchy, hissed the proximate ambassador. Freedom, Reid corrected. Every world that joins the Alliance does so voluntarily. Every trade agreement is negotiated fairly. Every defense pact is mutual. We do not demand tribute, we do not impose our culture, and we do not tell other species how to live their lives. And in return? I found myself asking, though protocol dictated that intelligence officers remain silent during council sessions. Reid turned toward my booth, somehow managing to make eye contact despite the privacy shields. In return, we get the most loyal allies in the galaxy, beings who fight alongside us not because they have to, but because they want to, because they believe in what we are building. The implications were staggering. The Council had always maintained power through a combination of economic incentives and subtle threats. The idea that someone could build an empire based on voluntary cooperation was, well, it was unthinkable. You cannot seriously expect us to believe, Korth said, his voice dripping with skepticism, that humans have somehow become galactic peacekeepers. Reid laughed, a genuinely amused sound that echoed through the chamber. Peacekeepers? Oh no, Your Honor. We are still the same violent, chaotic, impossible to predict species you expelled from the Council. The difference is, now we use that violence to protect our friends instead of bothering our enemies. And who, exactly, are your enemies? The Bendari delegate asked, still twitching slightly from caffeine withdrawal. Reid's expression went cold for just a moment, like a predator scenting prey. Anyone who threatens the freedom of our allies. Anyone who deals in slavery. Anyone who thinks they can bully independent worlds just because they have a bigger fleet. His gaze swept across the assembly, and I swear every delegate felt the weight of that stare. Anyone who mistakes our absence for weakness. Wartka. Makafer. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. The humans were not asking for readmission to the Council. They were not seeking approval or recognition. They were announcing their presence as a major galactic power and making it clear that they would not be ignored. What do you want? Korth asked finally, his voice carefully neutral. Reid's smile returned, warm and friendly and absolutely terrifying. Nothing at all, Your Honor. We just wanted to let you know that the humans are doing quite well. Thank you for asking, and to extend an invitation. An invitation. Any world that finds Council membership restrictive is welcome to consider alternatives. We are always happy to discuss mutual defense agreements, trade partnerships, or simple non-aggression pacts with beings who value their independence. The audacity was breathtaking. Reid was essentially offering Council members a way out, right here in the Council's own assembly hall. You are attempting to poach our member worlds. The Zephyrian delegate shrieked, his tentacles writhing in agitation. Not at all, Reid replied calmly. We are simply making it known that alternatives exist. What your member worlds choose to do with that information is entirely up to them. And with that, Marcus Reid gathered his materials, nodded politely to the assembly, and walked out of the chamber with the same measured confidence he had entered with. The chaos that erupted after his departure was, well, let us just say it was the kind of chaos that kept intelligence officers very busy for the next several months. Because within a week of Reid's visit, 12 Council worlds had submitted formal requests for exploratory talks with the Independent Human Alliance. The humans, it seemed, had learned how to be diplomatic after all. They had just done it on their own terms. 2 years after Marcus Reid's diplomatic bombshell, I was beginning to understand why my predecessor had retired early to a quiet farming moon in the Centauri system. The headaches were becoming unbearable. Sir. My assistant Krill buzzed through his translation unit. We have another problem. I looked up from the mountain of intelligence reports scattered across my desk. Each one told the same story: human expansion, human innovation, human success. It was like watching a slow-motion disaster that somehow kept turning into a triumph. Let me guess, I said. rubbing my temples with all four of my hands. Another council world has defected to the Alliance? 3 worlds, actually. The Belmont system, New Kashyyyk, and, oh, this is awkward, Zephyr-Prime. I nearly fell out of my chair. The Zephyrian homeworld? But they were the ones screaming loudest about human aggression. Krill's antennae twitched in what passed for a shrug among his species. Apparently their new government decided that humans who blow up slave ships are preferable to a council that ignores them. The irony was not lost on me. The Zephyrians had spent 2 years complaining about human brutality, only to realize that said brutality was exclusively reserved for beings who deserved it. Meanwhile, the humans had been quietly building schools, hospitals, and trade stations throughout former Zephyrian space. There is more, sir, Krill continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. Intelligence suggests the humans have developed something called the Titan Project. Please tell me that is not another one of their ridiculously oversized warships. Worse, it appears to be a mobile construction platform. Think of a space station that can build other space stations while moving at faster than light speeds. I stared at him for a long moment, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I reached for the emergency stash of Rigelian brandy I kept in my desk drawer. You are telling me the humans have built a factory that travels through hyperspace? 17 of them. Actually, our scouts report they can construct a full defensive grid around a star system in approximately 6 standard days. 6 days. It had taken the Council 3 years to build the defensive platforms around Nexus Station. Sir. Krill's voice cut through my existential crisis. Magistrate Quarth requests your presence in the emergency session. Immediately. The emergency council chamber was in chaos when I arrived. Delegates were shouting in 17 different languages. The air recyclers were working overtime to manage the stress pheromones, and somebody had apparently thrown a chair at the Proximan ambassador. Vex-Prime. Quarth's scales were cycling through colors so rapidly he looked like a malfunctioning disco ball. Please tell me your intelligence division has some explanation for this madness. He activated the central holo display, and my heart sank to somewhere around my ankles. The galactic map now showed human territory in blue, council space in red, and neutral systems in green. The problem was immediately obvious. There was a lot more blue than there had been 6 months ago. How many? I asked, though I already suspected the answer would give me nightmares. 47 systems declared independence from the council this morning, Quarth said, his voice hollow. All of them simultaneously. All of them immediately requesting Alliance protection. 47 systems. In one day. It was not just defection, it was coordinated rebellion on a galactic scale. There has to be some kind of coercion involved, the Altarian delegate insisted, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. No species voluntarily abandons centuries of council protection for whatever it is the humans are offering. Actually, came a familiar voice from the chamber entrance. They are abandoning centuries of council taxation for genuine protection, fair trade agreements, and the revolutionary concept of self-determination. Every head in the chamber turned to see Captain Sarah Okafor striding through the doors, flanked by 2 humans in what appeared to be ceremonial armor. Unlike the polished diplomats who had visited before, Okafor looked like she had just stepped off the bridge of a warship, which, knowing humans, she probably had. Captain Okafor, Quarth said, his voice carefully controlled. The council did not request a meeting. No, Okafor agreed, settling into the guest speaker's podium without invitation. But circumstances have changed rather dramatically, and frankly, we thought you deserved an explanation before things get complicated. Complicated how? I found myself asking. Okafor's smile was different from Reid's diplomatic charm or Elena's predatory grin. This was the smile of someone who had seen the galaxy's worst and decided to fix it personally. Well, she said, activating her own holoprojector, it turns out that when you give beings actual freedom instead of the illusion of protection, they tend to get rather creative with how they use it. The display showed a detailed breakdown of Alliance territory. But instead of the chaotic patchwork I had expected, It revealed a carefully planned network of mutual defense pacts, trade relationships, and resource sharing agreements that spanned half the galaxy. The Korthak Confederation has perfected bio-neural computing with human help, Okafor continued, highlighting various systems as she spoke. The Mantis clusters have developed instantaneous quantum communication networks. The Outer Rim Mining Guild has created self-replicating asteroid processing stations. And the former Zephyrian colonies have established the most efficient refugee resettlement program in galactic history. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. The Alliance was not just expanding, it was innovating at a pace that made the Council's technological progress look glacial. Impossible, wheezed the Bendari delegate. Such advancement requires centuries of development, careful planning, massive resource allocation. Or, Okafor interrupted, you just stop telling brilliant beings what they cannot do and start asking them what they need to succeed. You are describing anarchy. The Proximate ambassador protested. I am describing cooperation, Okafor shot back. Something the Council seems to have forgotten in favor of control. The chamber erupted in angry voices. But Okafor simply stood there, waiting for the noise to die down. When it finally did, she continued as if nothing had happened. Which brings me to why I am really here, she said, her tone becoming serious. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something disturbing in the Void Sector. The Void Sector. Even the name made experienced diplomats nervous. It was the region of space where the Devourers had first appeared, nearly destroying galactic civilization before mysteriously vanishing back into the darkness between stars. Our xenoarchaeology teams have been studying the Devourer ruins for months, Okafor continued, trying to understand how an entire species could simply disappear overnight. Yesterday we found our answer. She manipulated the holo display, showing what appeared to be a massive structure drifting in the depths of space. It was clearly artificial, but the design was unlike anything in the galactic databases. They did not disappear, Okafor said quietly. They went into hibernation. And something has been sending wake-up signals to their dormant fleets for the past 6 months. The silence that followed was absolute. The Devourers were not mythology or ancient history to us. They were living memory. The nightmare that had united the galaxy in the first place. Entire species had been consumed, whole star systems stripped bare of life. How long? Korth asked, his voice barely a whisper. Our best estimates suggest active Devourer fleets will begin emerging from hibernation within the next 18 months, Okafor replied. And based on the signal patterns, they are waking up hungry. Then we must prepare, the Altarian delegate said, her voice trembling. Mobilize the Council fleets. Reinforce the border systems, activate the ancient defense protocols. With what ships? Okafor asked bluntly. Half your member worlds have joined the Alliance. Your remaining fleets are scattered across 3,000 systems trying to maintain order. And your defense protocols assume you have the industrial capacity to build weapons and ships at wartime production levels. The brutal truth of it hit everyone at once. The Council's power had been built on controlling resources and production. With so many worlds defecting, they simply did not have the infrastructure to fight a galactic war. However, Okafor continued. And suddenly her smile was back. The Alliance does. She manipulated the display again, showing fleet compositions, production facilities, and defensive installations throughout Alliance space. The numbers were staggering. 18 months, she repeated. Enough time to fortify every inhabited system in Alliance territory. Enough time to build the largest combined fleet in galactic history. Enough time to prepare for a war that will determine whether civilization survives or gets digested by cosmic horrors. What are you proposing? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Partnership, Okafor said simply. The Alliance has the ships, the production capacity, and the strategic flexibility to fight the Devourers. The Council has experienced commanders, established intelligence networks, and detailed historical records of Devourer tactics. You want us to join your alliance, Korth said, his scales finally settling on a deep purple that indicated resignation. No, Okafor corrected. We want you to fight alongside us as equals. Keep your independence, keep your government, keep your pride. But when the Devourers come, we face them together. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to drowning swimmers. The humans were not demanding surrender or submission. They were offering partnership to the same council that had expelled them less than 3 years ago. And if we refuse? The Zephyrian delegate asked, though his species had already effectively joined the alliance anyway. Okafor's expression grew sad, almost pitying. Then we will defend alliance territory with everything we have, and hope that when the Devourers finish with council space, they will be too weakened to threaten our worlds. The implication was clear. The humans would survive with or without council cooperation, but the council might not survive without human help. I need to consult with my government, Quarth said finally. Of course, Okafor agreed. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, we begin full wartime preparations, and frankly, we will not have time for additional diplomatic negotiations. She gathered her materials and headed for the exit, then paused at the chamber doors. Oh, and Magistrate, when you are talking to your government, you might want to mention that every former council world that joined the alliance did so because they remembered who actually protected them during the last crisis. The humans may be chaotic, violent, and impossible to predict, but we have never abandoned an ally. Never. I called out, surprising myself. Okafor turned back, and for just a moment I saw something ancient and implacable in her eyes. Never. Even when our allies abandon us first. And with that, she left the council to contemplate the choice between pride and survival. The vote, when it finally came, was not even close. The Galactic Council voted unanimously to accept the alliance partnership, not because they trusted the humans, but because they had finally realized what I had known for months. The humans had not just built an empire, they had built the future. And the rest of us were just trying to catch up. 6 months later, as I watched combined human council fleets deploy across the galaxy's edge, I could not help but laugh at the cosmic irony of it all. We had exiled the humans for being too violent, too chaotic, too dangerous for civilized space. It turned out that violent, chaotic, and dangerous was exactly what civilization needed when the real monsters came calling. The humans, of course, had known this all along. They always did.